What is up, guys? We're live, my friends, once again.
Round 2.
Yeah, round 2. This is episode 3, right? Round 2.
Yeah.
Wait, why is it
episode 3, part 2.
was episode 1 round 0?
No. No, this is round 2 of episode 3 because we were doing that before you got on, but then we had all the time.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So we have Mr. Jacob Rognes. He's a gentleman and a scholar, very knowledgeable feller, and he's going to help us out by giving us some deep, otherly bearded political commentary.
Largely bearded.
Yeah. So how you doing, man?
I'm good. How have you guys been?
Good. Since you've never been introduced on the podcast, I think you should do an introduction of yourself and how you got the political views that you got now.
Let's see. All right. Well, my name is Jake Rognes. I say it started out pretty liberal. I think I learned most of what I know from you, Jake.
Well, yeah, I told that me and you were both quite far to the left, like when I first started college. So I think you were a sophomore. I was a freshman.
Yeah.
But mostly just really apolitical. But I know I voted for Bernie in the primaries in 2015.
Did you? And then
Yeah.
Did you swap? Did you vote for Trump in 2020? In 2016?
I voted for Gary Johnson, but
okay.
We found Ben Shapiro together, me and you, and he was who made us switch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pretty much simultaneously.
Yeah.
All it took was like a couple videos to completely flip your mind frame. That's how unsolid your political beliefs are when you're first getting into it.
Dude, that's big. Me and Mark were just talking. I don't know if you were listening to the podcast before.
I wasn't. I couldn't figure it out.
Talking about how things are changing from TV and like that kind of form of discussion now over to a long form discussion. Everything's online. Like TV's going to die with our generation.
Right.
And whether that's good or not, like obviously long form discussions are way better than a little TV bit where everyone tries to just, get their 2 cents in right away and like throw out a couple slogans to convince everyone they can. But at the same time, like it's even easier for me not to hear the other side now, I think, because.
Yeah, that's true. And I think you're moving away from news stories being, I wouldn't say news stories, but there's intellectual conversations in the long form where you're also having the opposite spectrum where people's attention spans are being shortened and people are just watching like 5-second sound bites rather than an actual person commentating on those 5-second sound bites.
Yeah, that's true.
Like BuzzFeed and
also like with the Covington High kids and stuff, it is very easy to cast a judgment on a video when you have no context around it.
Yeah, well, that was a case of there's separate videos and one side of it you're watching 15 seconds and the other side you're watching 45 seconds of it.
Yeah, so it's like video is
all the context.
It's a savior, but the way technology is going, it's easy to manipulate things. It's even easy to manipulate the videos. Like there's this guy, I don't know if you've seen him, Mark, or if you've seen him, Rogs. His name is Shamian on YouTube. And I always read that he's shaman. You sent it to me. He's the guy who he just takes a whole interview and edits it so it makes you can make the guy look like he's saying something he's totally not saying.
Yeah.
It looks totally real.
Yeah, some guy did this to Gavin McInnes.
Yeah, and he's on to Jordan Peterson a lot, so it'll be like Jordan Peterson meets Peter Jordanson or something like
Peter
that.
Jorgensen.
that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Have you seen Joe Rogan meets like Joe Rogan?
Yeah. Rogan meets Joe Rogan. They're just smoking a bunch of weed.
And talking about DMT chimps.
Yeah. The funniest comment I saw in one of those videos was, I wonder what Porden Jeterson would think about Jordan Peterson meeting Peter Jordanson. But yeah, man, basically like things are just easily manipulated as they always were, but almost even easierly manipulated now. And people know less about the history behind things. So like, old guys seem to be like more witty about stuff, and they're witty enough and they're not naive enough to just easily get cast one way or the other.
Did you say old guys or people?
Older people, because they grew up in an age where you couldn't be, and this happened a little bit less.
Yeah, that's Go ahead.
Also, old people, they're looking at it with more of a long-term view because they've been around longer. They have a more of a operational knowledge base versus like younger people that get so hyped up about like just anything too. So.
Do you think, are you saying that you think in present time people are moving away from caring about context, like our generation, not the older generation? Would you say that would be true?
For sure. I'd say we're more just blind and naive about doing stuff like that, like approaching new things. The way to approach the world in old stories and myths is you got to be careful, slowly go out into chaos and make order out of it. And I don't think that people realize sometimes the effects of but also that it's important and that you're the one that's doing things. So it's your responsibility for what happens when you do stuff too.
Right.
All of those ideas are just slowly fading away. It's easier to jump into a political solution that's quicker, to vote for something that might be more drastic than you realize it even is. And also with videos like that, to, if you already have a narrative, you'll be cast into that, or to just cast judgment on something without being more precautious about who made it.
Right.
I think it's based around a naive view of how good the world actually is, when I don't think the world is all sunshines and rainbows, man. There's a lot of evil.
Oh, absolutely.
And people in like third world countries and less privileged countries as ours realize this a lot more. Like for Costa Rica, for example, like leftists in Costa Rica are much more centrist than leftists in the United States. Maybe that's just because it's a deeply religious conservative country, but
that's interesting. Well, I didn't know that.
Well, yeah, they still have their religious roots. They're not going to really stray far from what they grew up on. So,
yeah, it's interesting though. Like for me, when I think about that, it's like, what are we without religion?
Well, yeah. What are we without a central binding ideology that we can all come back to at the end of the day, and defined roles, stuff like that. So,
interesting stat that I just read the other day. The Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris, all those super atheists, they all use this statistic to quote in their books, like 92% of scientists no longer believe in God. But it's a completely flawed stat. It's actually 90% of people don't believe in God in a traditionalist format. So that's just ruling out another 90% of people.
This is something that Nietzsche said too, basically, is that rationality tends to like eat itself and think it's God. So it just, rational beings just trying to justify their own or trying to make up a reason for their own existence that maybe is hidden in stories that we can feel, but that we've had all along.
Swaying statistics to fit your own cognitive bias.
Yeah, there's that too, which is no bueno. Statistics are hard though, man. Honestly, that's why a lot of this stuff, like, I don't even like doing it with statistics, because one thing is, which statistics do you trust? Secondly, you're never going to get a sample size that's representative enough to actually make cast a judgment about a big enough group or about society or anything like that.
Right. And there's definitely a big telephone game. Like, Ben Shapiro spattering off 50 statistics in a row. I'm sure some of them are right. I'm sure they're directionally right, but
yeah, and but basically that's what I was saying too. Is it's just us reinforcing our same ideas by listening to the dude and me. Like, I can tell you, I've spat off a lot of statistics that I've heard from people like Ben Shapiro, and I've never researched them.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's just another way of like taking a group ideology over the individual. But the only place you get that idea of the divine individual is from religion. What do you think about that?
Trying to.
Mark, you got anything to say?
I'm just sitting over here listening at this point. I'll jump in when I think I got some, but
where do you think the idea of religion comes from?
think it comes from basic pattern recognition stuff that we couldn't explain, that we had to chalk up to a higher being. There are certain things where it's like seems like an evolutionary story, like Eve, the apple, snake, stuff like that, where it's a deeper inbuilt story that we may not realize the significance of until we learn the science behind it. So.
Yeah, I had an argument with Andy about about that, really, about you can't just cast generalizations about how people experience the world and stuff like that, because that's kind of me just being a hypocrite, right? But at some point, you got to do it. You got to, like, you think about it, we're all fascists with regard to killing other people. Like, we all agree that you can't kill people. That's just it. You can't do it. So I'm a total authoritarian.
Well, we don't all agree.
Issue. Well, all three of us, at least.
All three of us, yes.
Yeah. No, we don't all agree. But that's what I'm saying, is that's me maybe just taking a necessary dose of evil to say, listen, all right, I am an authoritarian on this issue. You can't kill people. And that's maybe me imposing my views on other people, but I don't think it's right.
I don't think it. Do you think it's your view?
No.
That would imply that there's no actual moral code.
It would actually be a tyrannical view, a tyranny of the group onto the individual, saying that you can't kill people.
Yep.
It's Mill and his three tyrannies. So.
Yeah. So, I wanted to go back to what Rog said there. What did you say, Rogs?
I don't know, but just following off of that, is there a...
Oh, yeah, the moral code.
Is there a written moral law, or do you think it's just a natural evolution of
That's a good question, and I don't really know how natural it is. I mean, for, literally thousands of years, up until the 1900s, people have been treating people like dirt, like easily expendable things all the time. So I don't know if that is a moral code that's built into us.
We still treat people like that. We let genocides go on all over the world constantly. It's more of an inbuilt thing where we are more predisposed to ignore it and act like everything's fine just because it isn't affecting us at the moment, and there is at least a genetic framework for what they're doing already built into us, so it's easier for us to ignore.
Thinking about that within the context of like the United States, I think we're too big.
What are you talking about?
Well, we're way too big. We got too big of a populace, too many people for this to be a sustainable system. Like, honestly, I don't know if there is a sustainable system for a country that's as big as ours. So everyone's going to at least be happy enough to sustain the system. So I think that, the founders were wrong about that. Like, obviously there's benefits to it with regards to national defense and stuff like that, to having the United States. But now you're seeing this conversation about the Electoral College, and it's bringing up a lot of good points. Like, I wish people were more informed on why the Electoral College is there. But it is bringing up a lot of good points. Like, why shouldn't one vote, or one person be one vote? Why do you have to? And we have this weird tri-sovereignty where there's individuals, there's states against states, states against individuals, and then states against individuals and the nation as a whole. So there's like three competing sovereignties. It's like, that's hard to strike a balance, especially when there's so many people. Like 300 million is just a lot. So what I'm saying is, in a lot of ways, because what you were saying basically, Mark, is we let genocides go on all over the country, or all over the world. It's pretty easy for someone like us in Wisconsin. Like, if California just blew up, it would suck. Like, the people we knew in California, but we'd go on, It's just like, we don't even see California ever.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's too big, man. It's like, we need to thin it down into a bunch of little microcosms instead of having this big macrocosm that is a huge nation.
Well, that's one of the things that we also lost is, that we have lost, is the bottom up idea of the country. You take care of your community, then your county, then your state, then the nation. We are too top down right now for a nation this big to work. We need to be more bottom up, which really sucks, but
100% true.
Well, yeah, it starts at the individual level, and the second most important function is the family. And where do those ideas come from? It's all
I think that's why
from religion.
That's why I agree so much with what Jordan Peterson says, is because the only way you're going to fix this, you're not going to fix this with massive political action. You're not going to fix it with Republican Democrat battles, whether you think you're right or not, or whether you are right. It's not going to be fixed that way, because even an irresponsible person who agrees with everything I say is going to do something terrible, because being irresponsible is inherently something terrible. So that's where the idea, I think, comes of like a moral code, like you were saying, Rogs, that's not written, that doesn't really come from anywhere. That in order to have a free people, you need a responsible people. And without that, you lose liberty and you lose responsibility, and then you just go closer to hell.
Before any of that, you also need people that are willing to take responsibility.
Yeah, so there also needs to be some certain axioms, like you were saying, Mark. Like when our country was first founded, there was axioms that, all right, you are an individual. Like it's very easy to abdicate responsibility nowadays by taking the view that we're just essentially balls of flesh moving around based off of other factors in our environment.
And we have no control over what we're going to do next.
Yeah, and that's something that science has given us. So like science has helped us a lot with practical stuff, with making life easier, but I don't know if it's made life better.
Well, what do you mean? Science hasn't given us that knowledge. It's produced this ideology in people, but nothing in science says that we're predetermined. It's not logical necessarily to think that.
It's produced a mass of knowledge and a expansion of what our known world is, where it's so hard to sort through everything to get to a conclusion. So
yeah, there's that too. It's almost like information overload. Like I was thinking about that a lot of people, myself included, I don't know how a car works. I just use a car. But so like it's easy to see like a Huxleyian world where it's controlled from the top down, or even like an Orwellian world. It just becomes more and more easy. Not the dumber people get, but the more information there is to dissect, and the harder it is to dissect for the people who are actually using it.
Yeah,
true.
Like Google conducts a astronomical, like it's in the like tens of billions of searches a day, and 15% of those searches are new searches that they've never encountered before. So,
really?
Yes. Weird.
You guys got to check out, just talking about this, because I like to get down to the fundamentals of this stuff too. Rogs, what you were saying, how science doesn't actually determine what's going to happen and stuff like that.
There's nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, because quantum physics and quantum, problems with quantum stuff get really brought up, and it gets really deep and philosophical.
Well, we don't understand it at all, and we don't understand.
You guys got to check out this book, all right? The Order of Time by Carlo Rovelli. The Order of Time. It's really good, especially if you don't know anything about quantum mechanics or quantum physics or time, like I didn't, and I still barely do. It's very interesting and thought-provoking on this subject.
We really need to get Google Doc together for a reading list too.
Yeah, for sure.
That'd be interesting.
Rogs, you been reading any good books lately?
Well, I read that Synchronicity book. That was mind-blowing.
Oh, yeah.
Very tough to take away anything.
I find that anything in psychology is really tough to take away, because
it's really tough to explain and so abstract.
I was talking about this with Andy too. Freud was a guy, he was a psychoanalyst, and basically the stuff that he came up with is that there's reasons you do the stuff you do that are out of your control. So it's something in your brain that's guiding you, maybe a traumatic event, maybe something that happened with your mother or with sexuality. And so Freud came up with all these theories. A lot of them were crazy, a lot of them were wrong, but he really kind of pioneered psychology. And he's famous also for a quote that is that sometimes you just want a cigarette. So basically there's no reason behind what you do. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, like, that's interesting, because I think he's right. But at the same time, if you're going to say that there's ever a reason for the things that you do, who gets to decide when it's just you want a cigarette, and who gets to decide when it's something psychological? It's an easy sleight of hand game that you can play to judge the actions of others. You feel what I'm saying?
I think I can get catching your drift there.
Well, another issue with Freud is everything that he said was so fundamental and so like just brilliantly obvious that we only ever focus on his flaws of his theories. We never actually focus on the actual successes and stuff he actually discovered.
You know, that's interesting too.
I think he had another quote or something like that, how like he really didn't discover anything. Shakespeare did it first, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is with Jung, he was completely taught by Freud, was his apprentice basically, and they couldn't have more opposite views on most of their psychology. So
they disagreed on pretty much everything. Yeah, it's super interesting. What was I going to say? It's weird how get back to that one point. Like society is like, it's like an inverted pyramid where, you know, the bottom is where that little trickle of knowledge starts. It expands out and we have this communal knowledge that we're saving in books and information and the Google stuff and all that, like you said. But, people forget what's fundamentally at the bottom. And I think arrogance is one of the biggest things that make it easier. Like if everyone knew what seemed obvious to me, their worldview would probably change a lot. And if I knew what seemed, or, you know, there's a lot of stuff that I know, I don't really like, it doesn't click with me. That is obvious. That might change the way that I think about stuff. And so Jung also said that he didn't tell anyone anything new. He just told people that stuff that they already knew, and that just blew their minds. And that's so true, because the stuff that really blows your mind is something that you're like, whoa, like it makes sense because you already know it, but you just needed to be told it and needed to recognize it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the same feeling you get with listening to people like Jordan Peterson and
or anyone with whom you disagree. But I don't know. I think there's a way to like pathologize that too and let ideas just capture you. And once you have one idea you think is right, you really defend it to the death. And also you can just morph reality to fit that idea.
Well, that's our social media systems. It's built into them to narrow your viewpoint. It's built into the algorithm to take your own biases and enhance your biases.
Yeah, and they're pretty darn good at it. I mean, I see a lot of stuff. The stuff I see online is either stuff I really agree with or I really disagree with, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's like I either love it or I hate it. And it actually evokes like an emotional reaction in me sometimes. Like that is so right. Or I'm like, I'm angry because it's so wrong.
And it's not just strictly the right and the left. I wouldn't even say it's getting more polarized. It's being individualized as much as it can to every person. So it's not like you have.
And what's driving that? What's driving that individualization of it? Like, what are the incentives behind this?
Keep people on their platform longer.
Yes, it's money. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's money and power. So
money, it's ad space, it's clicks, it's
power, man. It's always
data. It's data mining you out, like basically all your thoughts and stuff out, so they're able to sell that to a company to market you more shit, basically.
So why every gas station, every store has their rewards card, so they can track what you order and send you coupons.
That's a very basic way to think of it, but that is basically what it is. Like honey, they probably do actually like save money with it, stuff like that. It's actually great, but you know they're recording your purchases and selling that to someone.
Yeah.
So I think this is where a leftist might say like, you know, that's not right. Like either people need to know or that transaction shouldn't happen. They'll say because someone's getting screwed. Like they'll portray someone as a victim. Someone's getting screwed in a transaction like that where my information's I'm basically being manipulated. So these aren't mutually beneficial transactions. I'm just being manipulated. And I suppose they're the person who has the authority and the wherewithal to be able to reorganize the transaction so it's more good for both of us.
Yeah, well, that's the question with it too, because now the discussion is regulating social media because they're like Twitter, the whole Jack Dorsey on Joe Rogan and being biased in who they're removing from their platform. So now it's more of the conservative viewpoint and saying we need to regulate these large corporations when historically that would have been
the conservative viewpoint is we need to shrink government, big government bad. The left viewpoint is big companies bad, big government.
Even deeper than that,
free speech question.
Even deeper than all of that, like I think fundamentally, a conservative viewpoint is one that's pro-institution, pro-rules, and pro-order, pro-restrictions. And a leftist, what would you call it? A liberal viewpoint might be something that's anti-institution, anti-rules, and I'd say pro-chaos, but it doesn't come off in that way because chaos is also opportunity. So I think both sides have a tendency not to acknowledge the benefits of the other side and the downfalls of their side. That's what really goes on nowadays. And Jordan Peterson talks about that really well when he talks about hierarchies and how conservatives are pro-hierarchy to the point that sometimes it ossifies. And people use their position in the hierarchy to get undue gains. And then, that leads to disenfranchised people. And there's a lot of bad stuff that happens with that.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So, but what you're saying is really interesting because now, like what you were saying, Rogs, is that this conservative view now is going to be pro-institution again.
Right.
The institution is regulating something as chaotic as a social media, tyranny, deplatforming people.
But they're essentially creating their own rules. I mean, yes, they're a private company, but that is now where the president of the United States is his main form of communication is Twitter.
So what do you guys think? Should social media companies be regulated?
I think they should. Personally, I don't like Yeah, I think they should be regulated as like a telephone company. They need to be a public platform. Yeah, even if they have to charge someone for it, but
Rogs, what do you think?
I do too, but I don't know how it's scary to do that because you look at like China and they have internet system that's completely micromanaged by the government. I mean, ours is too, I'm sure, but
I'm going to agree. I'm going to disagree. I really don't think that there should be any regulation or have a central agency controlling something that big and that bad.
Yeah.
And it's like, I understand the bad parts about both sides, but the one fundamental difference for me is that government isn't accountable to anyone. Government isn't held accountable to any consumers. So regardless of whether we're getting manipulated, we still deem it to be a mutually beneficial transaction to use the platform. So I'm going to defer the choice back to the individuals. Now, I think individuals should be more informed on the stuff they're reading and stuff like that. So it's a bad conundrum. On an individual level, it's like it makes me want to put the phone down, and just stay off Twitter because I don't want all that misinformation, all that manipulation. But when I'm looking at both slippery slopes, I see a slippery side on the China side of having governmental agencies.
That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah. And that's easy to see. You see already, Congress essentially just writing blank bills with their signatures on them and sending them off to the EPA or to some federal agency who are unelected people. So there's nothing democratic about that.
There's also the issue that I have with even calling for regulation on them is it would stop competition of setting up better, more open platforms that the market itself would produce. Yeah. But as far as right now, even if we just say there's a set, as far as base terms of service agreement that everyone has that's universal across all platforms to start with, I think that would be as far as a decent
I think it's something that the social marketplace will really sort out.
Yeah.
People are going to figure it out, whether it's the hard way or not. They're going to figure it out that if you have a regulatory agency that's regulating something you are okay with, that you don't want, or that you would want to be regulated anyway, eventually it's going to come back to bite you. And that might be would that be a conservative view, thinking that if you put something like that into place, eventually it's going to come back around and it's going to bite you in the butt?
See, I don't know.
It's tough, man. I just And also, with all this deplatforming and stuff going on right now, like I guarantee you guys, there's a bunch of software engineers who are just seeing gold, buckets of gold flashing before their eyes, because this is a golden opportunity for someone to make something like Patreon that says, I don't care what you say. You can use the platform. That's strictly what it is. I'm not policing views. This is what the platform does. And, it's a golden opportunity for someone like that. And Patreon had it. And
there's already platforms for that, such as Gab and Jordan Peterson, the one that he's setting up. We'll see what that ends up being. Mm-hmm. But as far as there are alternatives, it's just the ones right now are so big that they have so much punching power when they say, hey, fuck these little guys over here, that they're able to basically almost shut them down.
Yeah, so the question is,
hardly any effort.
Are they big enough? Like, do they have enough of a monopoly on force or on, social persuasion that they can stop anything from happening regardless of who they're deplatforming?
Yeah, and they've also had 4 years to tweak all these algorithms. I guarantee, like, when it comes time for the actual run up for the 2020 election, like 6 months before that, they're going to put in these new algorithms hard as shit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
That's what do you think that there's any secret agenda, or do you think large companies like Google, like Twitter, like Facebook, do they have their own agenda?
You talking about
do they have their own
secret agenda, like something really deep and organized amongst all of them, or
their own political agenda? They obviously have individual biases of whether they think left or right, and do you think it's institutionalized, or
you could call it a political agenda? Well, the thing is that the people who run companies like that, all the people on top are they're all just really smart people and people who are really good at doing what they do. And it's easy for people who are really smart and good in doing what they do to think they're good at other stuff that they're not as good at, like reorganizing society. So it's kind of like a power thing, but a lot of people don't realize what power is or how people try and grab power. That's my estimation, if that's what you were asking.
For me, I think their overall agenda, they are massive corporations. They want to push for exclusivity in a market. They're going to try to corral like as much power through a corporatist system as possible. They're going to try to work with the government where they can, but it's ultimately to stop other competition from coming up. That's why like Google gives Hangouts for free. It's the next best thing to Skype. You have to pay for Skype.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you turn to a regulatory agency then, because let's say like the idea then is that a governmental regulatory agency is going to be the one that's doing good against the companies who are doing bad. But the companies are still held accountable to the people using the companies, regardless of how big and how much persuasion and manipulation they have. If they do something bad enough, it doesn't take much for a big company like Google to fall. You know, if you look at Fortune 500 companies, like it really doesn't take much for a big company to fall. And these companies are actually pretty young. Like,
oh yeah, absolutely. We've never seen anything similar to it.
So rapid, and it's been such a rapid expansion too that it's almost like a new sphere. That it's
Google also holds a theoretical monopoly on the entire English language. Anything that is said, done, or any idea that is exchanged goes through Google at one point or another. They can manipulate any search result to favor something else. They can mislead people. They can really do anything.
Who's saying that a regulatory agency is going to be able to bar that?
I don't know. I think it might just be the best effort that we have at the moment.
I'm just talking about specific free speech laws being applied to platforms like Facebook and Twitter, where like if you're inciting violence, if you're intentionally
inciting violence.
Like Twitter's terms of service is has stricter rules than you would put on two individuals having a conversation in real life. And is that okay? Is that
yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a consensual agreement between a consumer and a producer.
Yeah, at a basic level, yeah.
Yeah, so the company provides a platform, and then fundamentally we say, I'm okay with them doing this, and we go do it. And so there's a golden opportunity for a company to come along and say, listen, we're all right with anyone doing anything. Because the people are getting sick of political correctness, and that's good. Even people on the more left, big government type people are getting sick of it. Because people start to realize that eventually it's like biting yourself in the butt.
Yeah, we had Chelsea Clinton approached by a bunch of SJWs about the New Zealand Christchurch shooting earlier this week, and she just totally basically shut him down because even she's fucking sick of it. So
yeah.
I gotta try not to swear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trying to keep this PG, but
yeah, man. So I don't know. People get sick of that, and I just think the social marketplace will win out eventually, under the assumption that we have responsible individuals, or that's at least our best chance. Because
that's what I think it's our best chance.
Yeah,
the surface level.
I think Jordan's got it right. That the best chance, the best thing I can possibly do to make a change right now, is just clean my room. Honestly, do something.
Keep your own life
to make yourself better. Take a little bit of responsibility. Walk the cross up the hill just a little bit. And people don't realize how important that is. But if you don't have that, we might as well forget it. We might as well forget the whole conversation. We're just fooling ourselves because we're going down the tubes. I'm not hopeful that we can possibly have a world without responsibility, where we'll be governed enough by something else that's not ourselves.
Wait, say that again.
The thing is, us being governed by a government, or us being governed by ourselves or by a religion. Say I adhere to a religion that tells me how I should act, and so I act in that way. It's not really the religion that's doing it, because the religion's just a story and a set of ideas that's making me act. So I'm the one that's governing myself. I don't think that anyone's going to govern us better than ourselves, or anyone can govern us other than ourselves.
At an individual level, but you need government.
Yeah, for sure. But that's what I'm saying with regards to a regulatory agency. If people are going to be naive enough to let big platforms do crazy stuff that they wouldn't agree with anyway, no regulatory agency is going to save us at that point. People need to be responsible enough to choose the right platforms. And I think there's going to be stuff coming out like an FDA, there already is, obviously, but FDA type organizations or regulatory type organizations that aren't governmentally funded, that just basically open it up and get more information out.
It probably isn't a good comparison, but comparing social media to television in the early days, you used to be able to do whatever you wanted on TV. And then very early on into it, government regulated with FCC.
Yeah.
You can't say
that was also pushed by a bunch of religious groups, because it was a free for all, stuff like that. They got mad that it was a free for all because they were, I think, soft nudity, swearing, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it really more started with the film guild, stuff like that, in the 20s and 30s than what it did with TV. So
basically, the fundamental thing is that humans always have a tendency to want to impose their views on other humans, unless they identify enough with the other humans to give them the autonomy not to impose their views on them. And in my estimation, you got to have a pretty darn small group for me not to have someone who I'm like, no, you got to think this way, and that really dissents and disagrees with me. Or you have to try and set up a situation where people agree to disagree, but people always say that, but nobody actually agrees to disagree.
Well, it depends on what the operational stakes are for that to happen. If it's someone that you're going to come into contact with every day, they're more likely to agree to disagree than what it is someone that you're just shouting at on Twitter.
Yeah,
or through a computer. Too. So
that's true too. And basically that's what I'm saying, is that the group has gotten big enough that it's really easy to just say some vile stuff, to think some bad stuff for bad things to happen because it's so big, so distant. It's just bad. So technology's given us a lot of good stuff, but man, I've honestly thought about just putting the phone down for like a month.
Yeah.
Just putting it all away for a month.
I've thought about going back to it. Well, I never had a flip phone, but going to a flip phone and just carrying that around with me most of the time.
Yeah, lugging around a flip phone just because a lot of times it just causes more problems than it actually does, and we get more and more distant. And communication skills is a big thing too. That's kind of going down the tubes with people. Like I worry about like generations like right after my brother. They're gonna have trouble communicating with people in real life.
How much of your day is spent using your smartphone for productivity?
Man, I use my smartphone way too much. I use it on average 4 hours a day.
Yeah, that's about what I'm at. And I wouldn't. It's not like I'm typing
Dude, that's a lot.
Writing a book on there or something.
Well, yeah, I'm not doing anything. It's like I'm not like you said,
reading Twitter.
4 hours.
A lot of times I also just have it on, have music going, have an audiobook playing off YouTube, something like that.
I'd say about an hour of mine is audiobook.
Yeah, that was a good like I used to listen to a lot more audiobooks and podcasts. I don't even barely listen to them anymore. I use a lot of Twitter and Facebook and stuff now, but it's just made my life worse.
I'm so bored with Facebook right now. Like, it's literally just shit. It's dead. I'm literally just sharing shit to piss people off because it's a dead platform. That's literally where I'm at.
Yeah, it's interesting, dude, and it's weird too. Like, I bought this iPhone, this new iPhone, and it's got this thing where I can set app limits. So, like, a limit to how much I use an app. That's so backwards to me that I buy the coolest phone ever. And then set a limit to how much I can use it, just to limit myself.
I'm gonna look at something quick. The stat for how much YouTube I watched as far as like gigs for the last month.
I gotta look at that.
Data usage. We'll go Wi-Fi here. Just on Wi-Fi. 17.5 gigs of YouTube.
Wow.
Man.
And I will look at it for the mobile.
I didn't even know you could do that, honestly.
Yeah, how do you figure that out? You good to go to screen time?
I can. I got Android, so I got 8.3 gigs of YouTube just on cellular.
But you think about it too, like Rogs, you're kind of taking advantage of this, like the opportunity that we have with this kind of technology to forward ourselves in the world, to find meaning, to take up responsibility, like you with making videos, with going out. It's giving you opportunities to travel and actually get outside and make cool stuff that people really appreciate. And that's got to be like really, like gratifying,
It's really millions of people have done that. And it's not like I would say that I've made a career out of it.
So it's like, honestly, it's like the same thing. It's like we've got this phone that we just need. Like, you don't set the phone to control you, right? You don't set app limits. Like, and if you do, you'll probably just break them. It's you, man. It's you that's doing that anyway. So if you're using your phone for a lot of bad stuff, it's decisions that you're making to use your phone for a lot of bad stuff.
Right.
I find it easier and easier. I don't know if it's because I'm getting older or because I'm just in a different part of the world, though. It's easier and easier for me to justify doing things that I know to be bad for me, just for my short-term pleasure right now.
It's becoming easier, you'd say?
It's becoming easier, yeah. In college, I don't know. I held myself to maybe a higher standard, or it might have been my environment, but I mean, technology is bigger now. Like when I was in college, I think the iPhone 5 was out or something. My freshman year,
like
iPhone
starting
4.
Your freshman year?
Yeah.
We've gone a lot. We've gone pretty far in 5 years.
It's gone crazy. Like I couldn't even imagine Face ID and Retina scanners. The fingerprint scanner blew my mind.
Yeah, right.
But so now, like I just find it really easy to just kind of blow things off and to just sit on my phone and to just waste 2 hours. Like it's easier than it's ever been, and that's my fault, obviously. But could the technology be playing a big part in that? And is it going to make things worse and worse to the point that it gets so easy that everyone does it?
Yeah, every app has implemented basically a slot machine type pull to refresh type mechanism in it. It's totally engineered you to, hey, if I pull it down, there might be something that I want to look at. There might be something I want to do. There might be a link I want to click on.
That's true.
They're engineering you for it while making you make the decision for it at the same time. That's why like the color schemes and stuff are blue. It's rainbow colors as far as like Google. It's all colors that you have a positive association with.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I'm not abdicating that responsibility, but it certainly is becoming easier to be irresponsible, I think. Because when you let's say there was no technology and all you had to feed the cows and milk the cows, like if you didn't milk that cow, the cow wasn't getting milked. And that was bad because then you didn't have milk. So you had to do it.
They get fucking pissy. Like
they
get angrier than shit.
You know, Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So crazy times.
Going back to Marx's point out the color schemes, it's just iPhones, how it's green when someone doesn't have an iPhone, so and it's like this ugly color green.
Yeah, dude, it's terrible.
You hate texting someone
just puke green.
There's no mistake. You know how easy this gap could be bridged? Just like Android could easily make message or like iPhone. What is it? iMessage.
Oh, they have that on the App Store, I think. No.
And iMessage, iPhones, and Apple could easily make something that's just has continuity throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, they could just put something on the Google Play Store or make an APK if Google didn't accept it. But
that's weird that competition hasn't bridged that gap yet. But actually it has. I think people are just so kind of fundamental in those institutions. Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Facebook Messenger.
Facebook
so fundamental
Messenger, that's all they use.
They're so fundamental in those institutions that they choose to do something that's worse for them just because that's the way they like doing it.
Mm-hmm.
WhatsApp's awesome, man. WhatsApp is like with your phone
it's really nice.
Anywhere across the world. Like it's just internet, which is iMessage is just internet too.
Snapchat, people do a lot of texting on Snapchat.
Yeah, that's weird too. I found I communicate a lot on Snapchat.
It's like 90% of what my messaging is on Snapchat if I think about it.
Yeah, it's so goofy. Snapchat's a big one too.
I'm split pretty 50-50 between Facebook Messenger and Snapchat. So it all just depends on who or what I'm
Dude, I worry about my kids too, like what kind of world are they going to live in? It's inevitable, they're going to have to they'll probably have to learn to code and speak a computer language that I don't even know,
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if they want you to learn to code.
Maybe not code, but like kids are so technological today. It's kind of like us with a grandma, where grandma's like, "Oh, what's that?" And they're just looking at the phone like.
And true.
Yeah.
Well, I'm already like that. I'm 20, almost 23, and I'm already looking at stuff like that.
Well, I see. No, not the way they look at it, but how they don't know how it works. Like they can't. My dad's mind was blown when he realized that we could both just talk to each other and have live video going at the same time.
Oh my god!
What we're doing right now. His mind was blown.
I remember FaceTiming with my grandma Lavon in Osseo, and she was in Madison. We were having like a small family Christmas with like half her kids, and we were all in the living room. She's like, "Oh my god, I'm in the Rockness's living room."
My dad just kept saying that is so cool. It's something that to me is so basic.
Well, also just think of how much change that they've seen. Like your grandparents probably started out with mechanical typewriters, then they went to electric typewriters, then they went to basic computers.
Yeah.
Now we're basically doing wizardry across internet in multiple rooms.
But what we were just saying is actually they went through less change that we're going to go through. They went through less change probably than we did in the last 10 years.
Yeah. It's what our future holds for us is going to be even more insane.
Mind-blowing, And so it's like...
will we be able to keep up with it at the same rate?
That's what I'm saying is that's what I'm worried about, that I could very well conceive of some piece of technology that my kid perfectly understands. Hey, Kelsey! That my kid perfectly understands, but that to me is just absolutely mind-blowing.
I didn't
You know?
you were like.
You didn't know I'd be facing this way?
No,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had no idea.
Sorry,
Yeah,
that was a
so.
distraction.
Well, guys, I think I got to head out here, honestly.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I'm perfectly fine with heading out. So.
Yeah, we will next episode try and organize something. This has been a very productive talk, though.
I think that was very interesting.
Yep.
Early next week, I'm open. So.
Yep. Next Monday or Tuesday. We'll try and keep it Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Alrighty.
Thanks
Farewell,
for having
friends.
me.
Yep. See you guys.
See ya.
See ya.